Hi, and welcome to the Diablo podcast, your home for Diablo diehards, tryhards, casual, and hardcore alike. I am your host, Xanth, and I have no co hosts today. Emergencies have pulled them away, but I do have a special guest, former Diablo 4 lead systems designer, lead class designer, lead designer, Adam Jackson.
Hey, it's great to be here. Happy to talk with you today.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Thanks for carving out a small chunk of your life and giving it to this podcast for what we think we have effectively called like the exit interview. Uh, we have managed to rope a bunch of former Diablo 4 people. The only time we can ever get you guys on here is when you leave the company or we trick people into breaking rules. But predominantly, it's when you guys leave, you get to come on and talk about all the cool stuff that is normally a little bit more veiled. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, totally. In fairness, I think I would have come on even when I had still been there. I try to make an effort, but
Well,
it is harder,
I'm
I'll
sure
admit.
you would have tried, but I know there are certain hoops that people have to jump through, and it's harder. They want to lock things down. I get it. We had Jay Wilson on several years ago, and just saying like the worry of like if you misspeak and PR is not over your shoulder, and then affecting stock prices and all that kind of stuff, which is
No, it's tough. Yeah.
yeah, that's wild. It's wild to even think about. So you don't have to worry today. Nothing you say is going to bring down Microsoft. It's Microsoft now. Microsoft stock price or affect the company in any way. Uh, we hope. We can only hope that, that nothing bad
We hope.
comes from it. So, Adam, before we get going, we'll talk all about like D4 and all that kind of stuff. I think it's always interesting to like, we've seen your face. You've been on campfire chats. You've been in, like the little commercials for each season and what have you. Let's talk about you. How did you
Yeah.
get to where you were, and then obviously like where are you going, so on and so forth. But like first, like how did you get to Blizzard? What brought you there?
Yeah, so long story. We'll do the whole story. Why not? It's
We
fun.
have time and an
So,
editor,
yeah.
so thank you, Rush.
Yeah, so let's see. I grew up playing games a lot, as many people that watch this podcast too, probably. I have a couple brothers and sisters, and basically grew up just playing games incessantly. So I was always a huge fan. I've played every genre, every game type you can think of. I had a Sega Master System, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, PlayStation, computer, PC games, everything. And at the time, getting into the gaming industry wasn't really realistic for people my age. There was no like path to development like there is nowadays. It wasn't something you could take in college, for example. So it was always like this pie in the sky dream to be a game designer, but I never really expected to. So funny story is I actually before working at Blizzard, I used to teach martial arts. I taught Taekwondo for many years. I was also a world class competitor as well, and was an instructor. And it turned out that one of my students actually, when I was teaching out in Huntington Beach near where Blizzard is, um, was someone that worked at Blizzard, and it was funny because it was like this family of five, parents and their kids, and they would always come to class. They were really, really good, and I really loved teaching them. And their dad, for whatever reason, one week just wasn't in class, and so I asked his kids like, "Hey, where's your dad?" Because he never missed class. That wasn't something that he did. And they're like, "Yeah, he was in Korea right now." And I was like, "Korea, you say?" And taekwondo's from Korea, but this was like not a family that would ever have any reason to go there. And I had just spent the weekend before completely losing my mind because the sequel to one of my favorite games of all time, StarCraft Brood War, had just been announced by Blizzard in Korea, StarCraft 2. And I was like, "What's your dad doing?" They're like, "Yeah, he went to go do his StarCraft thing." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And they're like, "Yeah, he worked on StarCraft." I was like, "Really?" And then I found out he's actually one of the original sound designers that did like the original music for like the Terran. He's the voice of the SCV, like one of the original employees of Blizzard Entertainment. So of course, when they came back, I had to get the tour of the campus. And then the stars got in my eyes. I immediately applied. I applied originally at Blizzard to be a balance designer on StarCraft. Immediately got rejected as I should because I had no qualifications for it. But I did get a job as a game master. And this was way back in 2009. I started in customer support as a GM. Uh, so that was my leg into Blizzard. I did that for a few years. Then I moved over to QA, and I was on a really special team at the time called the QA UX team. And basically, what this team was the original founding of the team was for World of Warcraft. And they basically hired a bunch of people that were really, really good at the game, like guild leaders and prominent members of the community, to play test new raids and bosses before they came out to give feedback and to test balance and to make sure that they're good. And I came on at the second wave of this program where they're like, hey, this went really well. Let's do it for everything else. So I got hired on the UX team primarily due to my expertise in StarCraft. But that part of the team, we got to play test everything before it came out. So this is like the dream job. You got to imagine this was like Hearthstone was in development, Diablo 3, uh Blizzard Heroes of the Storm, Blizzard All-Stars at the time. And so we got to play like every game, and my job was literally like play cool stuff and give feedback with a bunch of other people who really love and care about games. So I did that for a
So
while. That was
why
amazing.
did you not just stop there and just like live that?
You
Because
know, I probably I could have been happy. I'll tell you what, it was the dream. Eventually, though, they spun down that portion of the team, and I moved over to doing more traditional QA work. And I was on QA for Heroes of the Storm. And back then, I was actually the number one player in the company at the game. Really, really loved it. Got super into MOBAs through that game. It was my first MOBA, and eventually got on to be a designer on Heroes of the Storm. And that was when I made the leap from QA to design, which is one of the hardest leaps to make in the industry. Really tough to get in. But luckily I did, and I was on the live balance team there for Heroes of the Storm for many years. I was on that for quite a while. Beyond when HGC wound down, I have a million stories from that project. Probably my favorite project I've ever been on. I love that game and love the team that worked on it. And then I moved on to and worked on Diablo 4. And then I moved on to Diablo 4 as a senior systems designer. And then eventually was heading up the classes for the game. At the time that I got hired on D4, actually, they didn't have like a system and a classes team. It was all just systems because, as you probably know, playing Diablo or ARPGs a lot, like systems and classes are very integrated. Like the items impact the abilities, impact the affixes, impact the ways that you upgrade things. It's all interrelated. But eventually we got to a point where we split those off into two separate teams, and that was when I got promoted to lead and became the lead of classes going into launch. And then after the launch, soon after, which is a whole other story, but I became the lead of the live team and live classes, and that was kind of what I did until I moved over to Riot.
there's a lot to unpack there. Like
There's a lot,
you
yeah.
you gave
There's
like
a lot of stories there.
a full journey.
It was a long journey, very involved.
So I think we should ask the obvious question early, right? You
Hmm.
talk about having stars in your eyes early on, like driving you into the Blizzard campus, loving StarCraft, um, putting a lot of meticulous time and care into Heroes of the Storm, and then really coming in on the genesis for D4 and seeing it out the door and a little bit
Yep.
beyond. You were there for a long time. Why leave? Why not
Yeah.
keep going?
So, like I said, I had been there for a long time, 15 years. Traditional wisdom. I'm also a very ambitious person and know a lot about like economics and other things. And I know as a fact that, to get ahead, conventional wisdom says you should move every 3 to 5 years or so. Change jobs. It's good for your career. However, I find I'm just too emotional of a person as well and get emotionally attached to where I am. And frankly, Blizzard was one of the only companies on the planet that I would stay at for that long. They're great. But after being there for 15 years, I found that it wasn't really ambition because I had gotten pretty farther than I ever expected when I got hired, to tell you the truth. My dream was just to become a designer, not even to be a lead. But I really wanted to see how other companies did things. I was kind of born and raised at Blizzard as a designer, and as the world has changed a lot, and a lot of other companies that are very, very good and competent have risen up, there are a lot of different opinions and ways of doing things. And I really kind of wanted to see how another company that I deeply respected, and Riot was one of those that I played a lot of their games from the outside. You know, I played League, I really liked TFT, I loved Legends of Runeterra, their card game, and I wanted to see how someone else who I really respected did things. And you know, Riot and Blizzard kind of have a similar makeup. You know, they both are obsessed with the player experience. They have a very big attention to detail. Um, but Riot also has some differences, right? Like they operate a lot more in Eastern countries, for example, where you know the way that people consume and think about game development is a little bit different. And so I kind of wanted to see how things are somewhere else. And you know, I had kind of done Blizzard a lot. I knew how they do things. Honestly, I was happy at Blizzard and could have stayed, but I kind of wanted to push myself and to see how things are on the other side of the pond. So I did it, and right away I did notice that you know Riot is really interesting. When I was doing interviews, one thing that struck me was the people there are just so competent. Um, it's pretty hard to impress me nowadays, honestly. Of like, you know, I've met with game directors, I've and with game masters and everything in between many times, and the caliber of the people that I was interviewing with kind of blew me away, which was surprising. And then I looked at the leadership there, and again, the caliber of their leaders blew me away, which was surprising. And so I was like, you know, I want to try and see what it's like here. Is it just, you know, the first impressions type of thing, or is there something deeper here? And so I had to find out. And so I moved over, and so far so good. Been very happy here.
Nice. I mean that is good to hear, and it. I think we've talked about it on this podcast before. We've had Jason Schreier on, but like one of the things that gets brought up in the book is kind of that the bleed blue mentality, and you know like how sometimes like you can
Blue.
get right. It's,
Yeah.
we didn't plan it, but it,
No, we didn't.
it
But
just it just happens. I just look good in blue, and I can't help it. But how like sometimes that can be taken advantage of, like you can get too engrossed in the culture and get too complacent where you maybe don't want to look outside those walls. And we
yeah,
were talking before, like as an educator, that happens in schools all the time too, of people get very comfortable and then they don't push
yeah.
themselves outside of it because you just think like this is the best way to do something I've never seen elsewhere. um, so yeah, I'm happy to see it worked out for you and is working
Thanks. Me
out,
too.
right? Um, so a couple things I want to come back to. I'm curious on. I promise we are going to talk about Diablo, but I want to talk a little bit about Heroes. I want
Yeah.
to talk a little bit about Heroes of the Storm because you were on that for a while, and it's kind of been like this thing that's been hanging out in the back of like it's gonna go away. We're gonna shut it down, and like every time it it doesn't
It
want
won't die.
it won't
I love
it won't
it.
die. If anything, I feel like it's had like this little bit of a renaissance where people are like, you know what, we may not have appreciated it, and now that we think it's leaving, it's coming back. What do you think the future is for a game like Heroes of the Storm? Is it going to just keep going, or is it going to eventually die?
Oh geez, I have no idea. Like the thing is that community, like the people that like that game, they really like that game, and I'm one of them. It's one of my favorite games of all time. As long as they keep the servers up, I think people will play, and I think it's worth keeping them up, obviously, because they are. I have no idea, honestly, what's going on with it nowadays. It's been many years since I was on it, but um, I don't know. It warms my heart to see games like that people just keep. I mean, there's other categories of this too that aren't like live service. You think Mario 64, you think Smash Brothers Melee, you think Brood War. These games just refuse to go away. There's a community of people that just will speedrun or play these games until they die, and I think that's really cool. Like it's something of an honor to see a game and to be part of a game like that, right? There aren't very many that do that, but I
There
think
are
it's really cool.
there are
So
plenty of games that just fade away. Yeah, it seems like it is not falling prey to that. Um,
yeah,
okay, so we don't know what's going to happen, and that's fine. That's fine. Let's talk Diablo. So you mentioned,
let's talk Diablo.
like that's the Diablo podcast, right? Um, so you mentioned that you played a lot of games growing up.
Yep.
When did you first play a Diablo game? What let's just start there. When did you first play a Diablo game?
Yeah. So I cannot tell you the year because I was too young to remember what year it was, and I didn't really care at the time. But I did start with Diablo 1, probably when it came out. I was a little kid. What I remember most about that game was it was really dark and really scary. And that's it. But I played it a lot. I beat it. I remember my dad had an office like in his room, and that was like where the big computer was that had the cool games. And I would always go in there and play it whenever he wasn't working. And I played, like a lot of things, Civilization, Total Annihilation, all kinds of things. But Diablo was one of them. I did beat it and was very determined and had a lot of fun with that. Beat it with all the three different classes, then played D2 when it came out. I remember what struck me most about D2 was one, you could run, which was a big deal compared to D1, where
Yes,
you
having a
walking
sprint was
slowly away
huge.
and get when you get hit was just terrible. So you could run now, and then it was so much brighter. I remember just like having desert areas and these other places that aren't just
Right.
another dark stairway into another dark hole that is spooky. Um, but yeah, so and then D2, I beat that with every class. My favorite by far was Necromancer. Like many people, I'm sure,
Good
love just
good call. Good call.
minions with
Yeah,
shooting
it
colored
was
bolts of crap at enemies. Just so cool. It's so
it
cool.
was the yeah,
Uh,
definitely the first time seeing that play style come to life.
yeah, yeah, and
Where
and
like I
delivering on that fantasy was so cool.
yeah, 100%.
Um,
Although I still was partial to a druid, but that's a
I
me
love
thing.
Druid too. Yeah, I
There's
did the Storm Druid. I remember with the circle around you, and then
oh
you
yeah,
run through and slow things and kill them. That was the
that
one
was
that
the
I did a
best.
lot. And then
Uh
having a bear,
yeah,
but
that's what we'll talk about the bear soon. We will bring up we're going to bring back the bear. Um all right, so Diablo 2 and then Diablo 3. Any
Yeah, so D3, I play tested it. That was in the
That's right.
inside for that. That was when I was on the UX team. We were prepping for D3's launch, and our group was responsible for a lot of like the balancing, the pacing. I remember playing was it Inferno? I think it was the hardest
Mhm.
difficulty, and we would play test that a lot when it was insanely hard. We play tested a lot of different internal things that we tried to make D3 PvP work, which was really fun and interesting. Tried a lot of things before launch. That was a fun time.
I think it's
And then I
still
played it a
printed
bunch
on the
after launch.
box that we are going to get PvP at some point.
I'll tell you, we tried a lot of things, I'll say. It was a crazy time, but yeah, did that, and then I played it when it came out, played Reaper when it came out. Um, and yeah, so I played pretty much all the Diablo games quite a bit, when they were
And
released.
over that time, did you have a favorite class or a favorite spell? I feel like that's a good one too.
Oh, geez, spell. Favorite class was probably Necromancer. Although in D4, I like. Well, I guess it's the bias of working on them all. I really like grew to like them all because I had to play them so much and was so involved with their designs. Um, but but I think Necromancer is probably my favorite at heart. But favorite spell for whatever reason that I remember is D2 Sorcerer's Blizzard. I
Okay.
remember as a kid just really loving like the way that the icicles looked and the visual of it just was really really cool, and just slowing and kiting enemies was a cool fantasy. Um, but yeah, so
Okay. I mean,
Necromancer though is probably my favorite. Iron Maiden, Blood Golem,
yeah.
in for
I,
a good time. That was me.
even though it was like never super effective, that flame golem that you would get was
Yeah,
I
the
remember
Flame Golem was cool. Yeah.
like just seeing it for the first time and at this point I'm sure you played D2 Resurrected. Um
Hmm.
I the image quality of how everything looks now very much does match my memories of the time.
Same. Yeah.
Like this is what it still looked like despite the old graphics. Like in my memory, it is so core.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm tempted after this to pick up a little D2R and go make a necromancer at
Yeah.
this
Not
point,
surprised.
just to see it. I just want to see the flame golem. Um, okay, so you've got this good background. You're moving into D4. I think like on the outside, we see like a cavalcade of people come in and you guys have titles that I think like you can kind of understand. But like when we talk like a class designer or a lead class designer, what does that actually entail? Like, what is
Yeah,
the job behind the scenes? You know, because I think anybody else can. I can understand an artist, right? Like, all right, you're gonna make some art. Um, or we've had like Harrison Pink was on and came and talked about story. So like I think we can picture like, okay, you're probably sitting there and you're writing some stuff out and you're reading things. But like when it goes into design, that becomes in my brain way more complicated. It becomes like
yeah,
there are so many moving pieces to get this to work. So I'd be curious, like, what exactly is the job? And then could you run us through like what a day looks like? Like what does a day
sure,
look like for designing a class or like see, I know so little, I don't
yeah.
even know how to frame the question.
Totally. I'll delve a little bit deeper into. You actually framed two different questions a little
Right.
bit, which was what's it like to be a class designer, and then what's it like to be a lead. And those are two very
Yeah,
different things, actually.
exactly.
So
There's
I'll
so many
I'll
different
delve
things
into the
there.
differences and what both do. So there's a little bit of industry nomenclature, but you've got this concept of an IC and a lead. An IC stands for individual contributor, and they're basically like think of it like a frontline worker equivalent, kind of like the one that's getting in the weeds, doing the implementation and the design itself. And then you've got the lead, and you can equate that to a manager or a boss, and they're kind of determining the direction of the ship and where we're going to go, and determining what is the best use of our resources and our time and what we're going to do. So first we'll start with the day-to-day of an IC, and this is when I started and on the team and whatever. So an IC's job or a class designer's job is you are trying. So it changes a little bit between before the game came out and after the game came out too. Because you're maintaining something that exists versus making something from scratch. But same idea. You have some type of initiatives that have been given to you by the lead and the game director or whatever. Like, hey, the game needs this when it relates to classes. This could be like, hey, we have a barbarian. What does that mean? Figure it out. It could be, hey, the barbarian's whirlwind is overpowered. Figure it out. But basically, you've got a problem and you gotta figure it out. And depending on the relationship between the lead and the people that are working with them, some are more hands-on, some are more hands-off. I have a very particular leadership style as well. But the lead will be basically directing all of the designers like, hey, these are our goals. I'll use a frame of like a new season, let's say, right? New season of Diablo 4. As a player, you kind of know that when a new season comes out, you're going to have some balance changes. You're going to have we would have some new legendaries, some new uniques, some new play styles that we want to update, some current overpowered or underpowered things that we want to tweak, some amount of new content that is very different that we want to do, whether it's adding more passives, adding more Paragon nodes, whatever it may be. And so my job, the job of the class designer is, hey, this new stuff is coming in, figure out what it is you want to do. So, for example, you may be in charge of the necromancer and the druid, and I'll be like, hey, Xanth, you're in charge of necromancer and druid. Figure out what you want to do for them. You've got a new legendary, a new unique, whatever abilities you want to rework or update or skill tree stuff. You figure out the scope and what you want, and then of course you're working with the team to make it good. So, you'll come up with a paper design. We call it a paper design, which is like a list of things you want to do of like damage from this to this. And I want to add this new unique that does this. And, you'll run that by the team. So, you'll do a pitch. We'll see it. We'll review it. We'll give you feedback on it. And then at some point, you move from planning to an implementation phase where you put it into the game. And then we play test it. We do more rounds of feedback. And then once we're all happy with it, it goes into the game, and that's what we ship, and that's what you see on the live streams when I put those PowerPoints together. Those PowerPoints came from, hey Xanth, what did you do again with Druid? Oh yeah, here's your list of things. All right, what was the coolest stuff there that you want to put into the presentation? All right, that's what I'm talking about, right? And that's what I organize from the designer point of view. Now the lead is similar but quite a bit different. So the lead's job is to make sure that one, all of the people that are actually designing the class designers are on task, doing what they're supposed to. When they ask questions, as me as a lead, I'll be like, hey, Blood Necromancer needs a new unique. So I will tell you, hey, when you're working on Necromancer, the unique needs to be a Blood one. And then you can pick if it's like Blood Surge or something else or whatever, but it needs to be Blood. And then you'll bounce ideas off me, and I'll be like, oh yeah, okay, this Blood Wave one is good. We'll do that, right? Um, And then my other part of the job is a lot of coordination and like production and planning, actually, like logistics of when you want to make that new blood unique, we got to coordinate with VFX and sound and engineering when they need to put something in that you can't actually put in because the engine can't handle it yet. And so my job is to make sure that all the parts are kind of talking to each other and working together. And I'm the vision holder of like the larger initiatives and larger direction of things we do in the game, right? You're kind of doing the very specific battle tactics of how we're going to execute things, but I'll be the one that'll be like, hey, let's say for example season 2, vulnerability and crit are a problem, we need to rework how these systems are going to be. That's me as the lead figuring that out and giving an initial pitch, and then you getting into the weeds and doing the work and figuring out the details of it. But I'm identifying where the problems are, what directions we need to go at a higher level, and then making sure that we're communicating with game directors and other people and other side teams and downstream teams that depend on us to make sure that everybody is on the same page. And that's kind of development in a nutshell. It's a whole lot of all of that.
I like how that you use the seasons as an example, because also in my mind, I'm like, all right, that sounds like a lot of work in general, but then behind the scenes, like in season 2, there's also a whole expansion that's being built,
Yes,
which
there's a whole expansion
requires
team built at the same time.
how much harder is your job on that kind of a model where it's like, hey, we have seasonal content and expansion content, and like they they don't touch, but they're going to eventually. I think in particular of like
Ex-
tempering in the Loot Reborn season comes out as the expansion has been announced, and like there you guys are in the background, you're trying to put together the Spiritborn, introduce new things to the other classes, and now here's this massive system that gets dropped in your lap as well. How much harder is that like duality of seasonal and expansion content for the work that you do?
yeah, it's exactly as hard as you think it is. Is the answer. And one of the things that's kind of interesting. So we did split up our team. So when the game launched, like I said, I was lead of classes, and at the time, that classes team, and we said this publicly, so it's not anything hidden. But we had two pipeline teams going on. We had like an odd season and an even season
Right.
group of people, because having one group of people do both was it's too much for one group to handle because they need to like narrowly focus on their themes and their planning and things. And so at the time when I was lead of classes, we had class designer working on season odd pipeline season 1, 3, 5, etc. Class designer working on even season pipeline 2, 4, 6, etc. The expansion group of people working on the vessel hatred, whatever, and then the live team of like handling the stuff that we need to do right now. So it was like four different pipelines that we were in. And very soon after launch of the game, we realized that's not tenable. And so that was when, if you remember, my title changed from just lead class to lead live class. That's a whole story I could tell too, but I basically
Please,
moved to
we've got
only
time.
but I moved to only handling seasons and that pipeline. And so we kind of had a classes team that was working on the expansion, like the Spiritborn and all the class updates there, because expansion's a bigger overhaul, right? You have to like add new skills and do these other things. And season, you have to keep that churn going of just continual content to make sure that players are happy. Um, and so the focus of those teams is a little bit different. So we did split it off. But you're right, of there's a difficulty there of like when you're working on seasons, you don't really know what you're going to be working on too far in the future, because if you do, it's almost not good to have those kinds of plans because you have to react to the live game. And the needs of the live game are going to surprise you. Like some of the things like, oh yeah, we should add some new legendaries and we need new balance updates. Like that's kind of known. But like, the extent of what we need to do for Loot Reborn or what we need to do for our combat math updates with Vuln and Crit and things. Like you don't really know those things until you send it to the players and you're getting the feedback and you realize, oh, this is a problem or this is an overhaul that we need to do or whatever. And so when that happens, like that lead I told you, my job then is like, hey, we're doing this the Loot Reborn thing. It's gonna screw all itemization. Have fun. And yes, expansion team, you have to design around this too. So we have to be in constant communication with them of like, well, where does it matter? Where doesn't it matter? What are the things where we need to conflict and figure out a solution for, and where can they work without depending on this Loot Reborn thing? and it's a lot of coordination between the groups, and it's just a lot of talking, a lot of planning. That's why I said like the when you go from IC to lead, it's kind of strange, and people told me this too, and I knew it to be true, but it happened much more suddenly than I expected. Of when you become a lead, you have to like separate yourself from that icy work of like being in the weeds and knowing everything that's going on. You become much more of a, you have to hire the right people, you have to be mentoring the people and be giving them enough rope and trust to work with that they can make correct decisions without you. Because as much as you want to be in control and take, do everything your way, it's just too much. The volume is way too high. You're spending way too many times in meetings and coordinating with other groups and people that you kind of have to let go of being that designer that is making cool shit, which is what everybody really wants to do. You still can do a little bit of it. I get to do it from time to time, but not nearly as much anymore. But that's just kind of, the growing in your career and what happens, and you have to make peace with that. But yeah.
uh, so I was in generally curious, like, as you step into that lead role, right? You also then step into more attention, right? Um, Jay Wilson described it as being like BlizzCon famous or like moderately famous,
Medium famous, yeah.
medium famous, right? Is you you were in your time at D4, I don't think I ever heard anybody say anything negative about you. And if they did, I'm not going to bring it up here. This would be the wrong avenue for that.
It's okay. I know people do sometimes. I
I
read
mean,
everything.
it's the internet. Like that's what happens. But you were a genuinely liked figure that people were sad to see you leave. Um, but that being said, being put into that role, like becoming more front facing, is
Mhm.
there a little bit of stress that comes with that? Like this, like I have to sit down in front of the internet and talk. Like I think
Mhm.
of that first campfire chat when everybody just looked so sad. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I remember that campfire chat.
like like I just felt bad. Like, guys, just
Yeah,
come back.
I can speak to
Is,
that.
is
Yeah.
that is that harder? Like, is that harder to have to like go on and deal with angry? I'm going to use the term derogatively, but I'm a part of the group too. Angry nerds all day, um, that like are upset because some numbers switched over. Like that
Yeah,
that
I
wasn't a
can
part of
speak
the
to it.
deal 20 years ago, right? It was just
No, it absolutely was not. And that is a way that the world has changed. And so, funny enough, actually, my I call it my brand, but my brand as a designer, it was always intended to be this way. One of the reasons why I wanted to become a designer in the first place was when I was a kid and growing up, you're right, you didn't hear the people making your games talk about them at all. And one of my goals actually of being a designer was to kind of pull back that curtain a little bit, and I wanted to talk with the community and talk with people and do it in a way that wasn't like just giving BS or weak answers, like actually saying real information and talking about what actually is going on with development in a very professional way. And so I intentionally built my brand around that. I actually started doing this back on Heroes of the Storm before Diablo a lot. I would respond to Reddit threads quite often. I did a lot of interviews. I even went on podcasts like this one. And maybe I'm built different, but I actually really enjoy it. And I find that my goal even then and now was to elevate the discourse to, instead of just saying I hate this and this is stupid or whatever, is like talk about why things are the way that they are and have a real mature discussion about it. Because most of the time when you're talking about like things in a game that you don't like, it's because there's some type of a trade-off that the designer is making, and you're only seeing the downside, not the upside of it. And I really love playing a wide variety of games for this reason, because I like looking at those trade-offs and analyzing, oh, this is what they must have been thinking. This is why they have this downside. And being inside and being a designer, I just see it. I can't unsee it coming from QA and customer support and being a designer. But I enjoy that, and I think people would have a better time and enjoy their games more if they thought about and talked the way that I approach it. And so I just try to bring that to people. And so for me, it wasn't. I also, because I used to teach Taekwondo for many years, I got used to the like standing in front of everybody at school and giving your presentation type of thing. As a kid, it terrified me. Nowadays, I just you flex that muscle enough, like you probably right. You can just go and talk. Like it's nothing now, but before, I'm sure it was hard.
Oh,
And
I got I got into teaching and I wanted to do it. I like the idea of it. And then like I realized, oh, there's a public speaking component to this. I'm gonna have to
Mhm.
like figure that out. And yeah, I had a few years to get there before I started teaching, but then yeah, at this point it's muscle memory to kind of just
Yeah, you just do it, right? And there is a it's not meant for everybody. Now,
yeah.
the downsides of this are very clear, and I want to be clear that yes, this comes with heavy risk. In today's culture nowadays, you can lose your job if you say the wrong thing, whether it's talk about other people in your industry in a disrespectful way, or you get into politics too much and are on the wrong side of things, or you just have a bad day and say something dumb. Like you can legitimately lose your job after many years, or become a meme of some kind from some one thing that you said one time. Little personal tangent. I will say it's a travesty, and it's involved with Diablo, so enough. But Wyatt, the "Don't you have guys have phones" meme, it's a travesty what happened to him, and I feel so bad. If you knew that man as a designer, he is one of the best designers that has ever worked on games. I've been in rooms where he could design circles around me. I'm pretty good, not to brag, but he
I
is insanely passionate, insanely good, and it is so sad to me that his legacy is just going to be one meme for something that's
right.
not even really his job, for going in front and talking to people, having a nervous moment, and then that's what happens. Like it's just sad, and that's what can happen. That's the
I,
risk we all take.
yeah, I 100% agree on on Wyatt. I mean, what happened to Wyatt was the natural instinct of anybody giving a presentation as you see it maybe not going well, right? And trying to
Yeah, right. And
like I would equate it, I use it often in a classroom of steering into the skid of like you see the
yeah,
energy, like you're going to try and steer into it and like this comment is meant as a joke and hopefully they take it, but it just
and if you're
doesn't.
wrong,
Yeah,
that's
you're
it, one time,
and
and
you are
that's just terrible.
I have never heard anybody say anything bad about Wyatt. I
You won't. He's so amazing.
I
If you met him,
we were
the guy's
talking
incredible.
when we were talking pre-show when I had my interview at Blizzard, uh he was supposed to be on the interviewing team
Oh, really? Oh,
and
that would have been a treat.
he was out and I was so disappointed but also relieved because I was nervous
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, it'd be scary. I get you.
to yeah to have him interview me because again same kind of thing. I had heard nothing but good things. Everybody adores him. If my two co-hosts were here, they would share many stories of him taking time during BlizzCon to come and talk and just talk about
Yeah,
life, talk about his experience. And yeah, you are absolutely right. It is a bummer to see that he has been memed. And
it is.
again, like I get the desire for it. It's not to say that like people can't be critical, but why it shouldn't be reduced to just that.
Yeah. So, but it's the risk that we all take, and even that
Right.
I take every time. And I know it, but I feel like the gains are worth it. You do build your own personal brand is one, that is a benefit, but you also just have a chance to have your voice heard and to make the discourse in the world better. And as much as, there's so much negativity on the internet, I get it, like people say the worst things, but those aren't really the people that I'm speaking to, I guess, when I think and when I'm talking, when I choose to come on podcasts like this. Like I think about the people like me that just don't really post very often, if ever, and they have good conversations with their friends, or they go and they're just thinking alone in their room about how they would do it, and then they're the ones that are going to be inspired to be the next generation of people that make great games. Um, and that, a lot of things are unspoken, I think, and the internet doesn't have everything that people are thinking or feeling or talking about. And so it's those long-term inspirations that I think I'm trying to cultivate of like how to think about problems, how to talk about them, how to do it in a way that isn't derogatory or mean, but like actually it's us against the problem. And it's okay to have different opinions, but I think a lot of things that designers do are dumb, or like decisions that games make are terrible. But you can still like understand where they were coming from, right?
Right.
And it's okay to disagree. I disagree all the time. I invite people to disagree with me, but have a good conversation about it, I guess, is how I approach it. And so I like to have good conversations.
which I think is fair, and I think that kind of approach will suit you well going forward, right? As long as you're able to kind of keep engaging in that, and um,
Yeah.
you know, not let the not let people get you down. Um, you had one pseudo meme moment. You did create this great T-shirt with damage on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Are you
Oh, I
upset?
should have worn it. I have it, but
Are you
I didn't think
upset
about
that Blizzard hasn't sold that? Because I was
it.
surprised that I couldn't go purchase that from the store.
Actually, I'm in the opposite camp. I'm very glad that I am so special that it's mine. So, they made very few of those. I think only the people on the stream or something. I forget. It's less than 10, I'm sure.
Okay,
People
well,
have that shirt. Maybe less than 5, but I
I'm
don't know.
I'm really surprised that they didn't try and capitalize on it. It was great. I liked it
Me too
and
a little bit. Yeah.
would purchase it. So Blizzard, if you're probably listening,
Not up to me, so hey, I don't care.
right. If
I
we're
don't
gonna
have rights
I
to
if we're gonna get their attention, it's gonna be from this podcast. Maybe
it.
what when we are just going and talking about like seasonal stuff, they're not gonna listen, but they're probably gonna listen to this one. So I'm just saying, maybe you sell
Damage
it,
on Tuesday, sure.
maybe you just send one to me. I don't care, but we can make that happen. I hope. Um, no, I did like that. I think that is also that exemplifies what you were kind of talking about in terms of like recognizing like, hey, yeah, you're right, these kind of attributes are kind of silly, and the damage on Tuesdays is out of control. Let's engage with this conversation instead of like being too defensive of saying like, no, everything's fine, we're not going to fix it. Like, no, you know what, we can have some fun. You guys are making games, not saving lives. I mean, and like, it's not to say that games aren't important. They absolutely are. They do provide an outlet. They do provide safe spaces. But the immediacy of action is very different. Like whether the game comes out and needs a little bit of work versus saving someone's life in 5 minutes, very different and can be treated differently. And we
Yeah,
get
having some levity is fun.
yeah, absolutely, cuz what's the point if you don't? So, we're up to, I mean, essentially getting, we got an idea of how, class design and leads kind of differentiate. We're up to you getting to Diablo, right? And getting things out the door a little bit. What was that like? I mean, you got to be responsible for what was essentially one of the fastest selling and largest selling video games of all time. How does that feel?
Pretty great. Man, it's weird. There's always a duality of feeling, right? Because like on the one hand, one of the fastest selling, biggest games of all time, right? But on the other side, it's like living up to those expectations of everybody that are so often very conflicting with one another. It is hard, right? Like you want to make this game that has a lot of depth and can have 1,000+ hour experience for your hardcore people, but also be big enough that you're capturing all these new people and that constant tension, that people talk about to this day is a hard thing to manage. And when you read those reviews, and you see people talking about it. It's very polarizing. People. The thing is that when you have a game that's that big, and I give my kids this advice too a lot of like, when you have something that's really, really popular, what it means is that like, let's say you have 10 million people playing your game. That means that if 99.9% of people love your game, you could fill a football stadium full of people that hate it. And if you sit there and stand in that football stadium in the middle, you think the entire world hates your game, right? And that's just like like humans don't understand that very well, of like large numbers and how that works. Of like it can very easily get caught in an echo chamber where it feels like everybody feels this one way, and especially with the internet, like it's kind of like when you go to a store or whatever. You don't go to the store to complain about how good the service was, right?
Right.
And so you have some bias there of like, the funnel of where the feedback can be coming from. And so you have to kind of like actively remind yourself like, no, wait, a whole lot of people love this, and you're doing some things right, even though a lot of people say everything, they're pointing out everything that's wrong, and most of it is stuff you already know. But there's also a lot of things you did right, right? A lot of bets that you made that paid out. And so, sometimes you have to like remind yourself and remind each other of that. My favorite time of doing that is actually BlizzCon. Probably the biggest thing I'm gonna miss about being at Blizzard. BlizzCon is just a magical experience as an employee, even as a guest. I've been both. I loved both, but as an employee, it was how you recharge your batteries. Of like you just get to talk to the guy or the mom or the kids that just like tells you how they just come home and that's how they relax and how much they love it. And like you have all these intricate problems you're thinking about. They don't care. They're just like, yeah, the ice beam thing looks cool and I love it. And that's their feedback for you and that's it, right? It's not about efficiency and oh, this one thing is 5% better than this activity, so why bother doing activity A? None of that garbage. It's just yeah, the minions are cool and I like when they kill things. And that's as much as they thought about your game and you delivered, right? And that's just really gratifying. Seeing those people just really love the game, and then seeing people that like meet over it or bond over it with friends and family, that kind of stuff is really cool. Um, so that's the most gratifying part, and the part I miss the most right now.
Well,
Because
I'm
yeah,
sure you
BlizzCon's
could
something
still
special.
go to the next one, right? You
Oh, I'll try to go, but it's like you're at the signing table and you get to be the remember
Whoa.
that mini celebrity, right? Like that's really fun. But going incognito's fun too, so
I,
I don't mind both.
Adam, I don't think you would be able to be incognito. Like I
No,
think you
I
would be.
mean,
I mean, you would. I'm sure if you stayed over in like the WoW side and any other game, sure. But if you moved on into Diablo, you'd be recognized pretty quickly, and I'm sure they'll get you some sort of VIP access. Um,
I don't know. Maybe we'll see.
well, it's happening next year, yeah. So
I think so. I
yeah,
haven't heard. I think yeah, they're not doing
Oc-
it this year, but next year. I think is
yeah,
what I heard.
I think October because
Yeah.
it'll be Diablo's 30th anniversary. So
Oh, that'll be a big one then. Yeah, that
yeah,
should
I
be interesting.
I think you kind of have to go. I think
Oh, if I can, I'm gonna be in line like everybody. I'm gonna try and get any connections I can. You better believe it.
I
But
feel like you have to have an in. So make that happen. Make I feel like you have to make
I will
one
definitely
call.
try.
You have to make one call. Um, so you talked a little bit about like that little bit of negativity, kind of like being central. Like D4 launches really well, but does have some criticism. Um, it's kind of wild to look at it. Have you played the newest season that just came out? Have you did you jump
I
in?
haven't played the newest season, but so as of now, since I left, so one of the things that makes it hard is so when this is a personal thing with me, but when I'm working on a game or a genre, I try to balance two things with my free time, and I'm a dad with four kids, so having free time
Right.
is kind of precious for
Oh,
me.
I get it.
One is yeah, I must be an expert in my game or my genre.
Hmm.
So like with D4, when I was on it, I played it every season a lot, both internally and externally. When I was Heroes of the Storm, I was a Grandmaster player every season for like 20 plus seasons. The entire time I was working on the game, I was a Grandmaster player. That is just like I need to be an expert at that. And what that means is I don't have as much time for everything else. And so usually what I do is I play like two games at a time at home, sometimes three. I have like a forever game that is like a live servicey Diablo type where like you never really finish because they keep coming out with
Right.
content. And then I play a game that actually has an end screen like Expedition 33 or Silk Song or
Right.
keeping up with the trends of the gaming industry because I think actually as a designer, both are extremely important and valuable. Like you must be an expert in your thing. If you're not, I think that's a problem.
Right.
Um, but then also having that like I play platformers, fighting games, card games, puzzle games, and seeing the problems that those games have and how to solve them and seeing how their developers solve them is very good to learn about your own genre or see it from a different perspective. Fighting games have a lot of moment-to-moment combat things you can learn in the ARPG space of how to make that stuff feel good and vice versa. The ARPGs are great for learning systems and how player motivations work and things like that. And there's just a lot of cross-pollination. So, now that I'm not on D4, I've freed up that time, but I play other things in the space. I still keep up with it. So, like, I'll tell you just vibes that I've got from keeping up. But it seems like people are really happy with season 10. They did some Chaos Armor thing that seems batshit insane to me. Of they like let you have uniques on things that shouldn't have them. So I don't know
Yep.
how they're balancing that, but they must be godly because I was afraid of that. That's not a new idea, but it wasn't one that I've approved. So glad to see they did it, but that's pretty cool. But people seem to really like it. That's kind of the vibes that I get. But I honestly I haven't been playing or super keeping track
I
of
only ask
of
because
it
like
since.
I mean, one, I do want to know what else you're playing because I am generally curious about that because like there's this
Yeah, I could tell you.
Adam, this year in general has felt like
It just
one,
adds to my backlog because there's
right,
so many good games.
it
My
is
backlog just keeps getting bigger
it
because
has
there's too
felt
many
like
good
one of
things.
the best years in gaming.
It's insane. Yeah,
It's
I
like
agree.
every month there is something else that is hitting, and like this month has been horrible. I mean, like
In the
horribly
best ways.
awesome,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, in the best ways. Yeah.
That like you said you've got 4 kids, you've got a marriage, you've got all
Yep.
these, you have a job and like all these other things where it's like so hard to carve out the time. um what a great problem to have, that there are
It is. It really
so
is.
many
Yeah.
games to play. But I bring it up because by season 10 the game has completely changed from where you launched. Like how
Yeah.
hard how hard is it to kind of keep a vision in a game, especially like in an ARPG space, where you're constantly having to kind of raise the stakes? Like the game at season
Mhm.
one, I got to do, or no, it was season two. I got to do like a shoutcast of people leveling. So there, like you had 100 of the best Diablo players leveling, and that broadcast went for about a day to when they hit Paragon 100. 24 hours. And it was actually longer in the first season. And now that has sped up to Adam, a non-expert Diablo player, right? I was able to get from the 1 to 60 in 4 hours the other day. Uh,
Yeah, D3 had a similar thing too. Yeah.
Right. I mean, eventually you want, to kind of like expedite that leveling, that early leveling process, because that's where players
Yeah.
aren't having as much fun. And I get that.
Yep.
How much harder is that on your side to like have to deal with the ever evolving game, that the game that you set out and made is no longer the same thing anymore. Like the yardstick
Yep.
keeps moving.
That is funny enough. I'm actually giving a talk to people on my team tomorrow about this subject, so,
Hmm.
or something very similar.
Well,
Funny
you
enough,
can
tangentially related
prep
to
here.
learnings in game design. Yeah.
I will be the young designer learning. Like,
Oh yeah,
Adam,
yeah.
I've got a problem. The game keeps changing. I don't know what to do. Because I'm from like Jersey, I think that accent was. That's the best I could give you.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. It's actually a pretty deep subject. So one is it matters a lot whether or not you're a live service game. And when you are a live service game, this is a natural phenomenon that I have noticed across nearly all of them. And that is that when you launch your game, it is very important to have a very clear vision of what you want and to have very strong fantasies and play styles and things that players are doing. And it's pretty concrete and distinct from one another, right? And most games start this way. Of you need to onboard people to your world or to your new mechanics, whatever it may be, right? If it's a whole new game, you need to introduce them to everything. If it's the next part of a franchise, you need to introduce them to what's different and what's the same and get them kind of used to it, right? And get new players, so you still kind of have to do the first part anyways. But as the game evolves, the needs of the game change pretty dramatically. You're no longer trying to introduce people so much to your world from point blank. You need to make your game continue to surprise and delight existing players. And the problem space that you run into there, which is what you described, is when once people have been exposed to your game, surprising and delighting them does not mean more of the same. If you do more of exactly the same, they're not going to be very surprised or very delighted, and it's not going to be very interesting. So you have to wow them. What does wowing them mean? It usually means some version of bending or breaking the rules that you set out when you first made the game. And so eventually what happened, this is like really the source of a lot of power creep in games. It's not that the designers want to make things more powerful and number must go up. It's that it's a natural result of you needing to continue to impress your players and give them something that they haven't seen that is going to make their eyes go wide and excited to come back season after season or expansion after expansion, whatever. And usually, what ends up happening, I can point to a lot of examples of this, of the very long term games. But a lot of times, games will get really out of hand with this because, like you said, it gets like too strong and crazy because of these gains. And so then these games usually will like the power and complexity of your game goes up, and then you have a reset moment where it goes back down again. And this is like a seasonal reset where your character starts at level 1 again, or a stat squish, or a simplification of tooltips or designs or whatever. And then it goes up again, and then you revert, and then it goes up again, and it reverts. And that's kind of what your super long-term games you'll see. You see this in Hearthstone, you see this in WoW, you see this in like League and other games of like your game gets really, really complex because they keep adding on new mechanics, new mechanics, new mechanics, new power, new power. And they're like, oh crap, we've gotten so complicated that we can't get new players anymore. Oh, we gotta like simplify it again, and then the cycle begins anew. Um, Another thing that happens, which is a related but different phenomenon, which is what you were kind of touching on, which is like the game vision and the design itself. Of like, I set out to make game X, and now it's becoming game Y.
Hmm.
And that is another kind of natural, I think, thing that happens if you are a developer that's trying to be in it for the long haul. Now, some people can get away with this, and there's actually pros and cons to both, I think. I like both styles of games, actually. One is like you release a game, F you, that's the game. Deal with it, learn,
Right.
right? Like Super Smash Brothers Melee is a good example of this. That game's been the same for 20 plus years, and people are still innovating in it. Or StarCraft Brood War, same thing. Like that game's been the same, and people are still finding new things and ways to express themselves, right? Or Mario 64 with speed runs. People are still like seeping out all the joy that they can out of that stone, right? That's there's something beautiful there that I think is great. But then on the other side, you have live service where these games are kind of evolving with the players and with the world and with the tastes of what the communities and people want. And those games end up in wildly different places than where they started. You got like League of Legends today, and look at what League was when it started. Very different games now, right? The only thing that's the same is like you got 3 lanes and you're killing a Nexus, but everything else has gone through a lot of iteration. Same with Diablo, right? Like the game and the like when you talk about speed of leveling, difficulty, these other things, a lot of things have evolved with just what the players really want. And there's an argument there to be made, and I always find it very fascinating and interesting. One of the things I like doing that's kind of fun personally is I like to follow game dev stories from before they come out, seeing what their vision is and what they're like, where they're putting their lines in the sand and their pillars, and then seeing how much those get broken whenever they run into issues after it launches, because most of the time they bend or break almost everything because again like your players need to like your game, and so that's important. But then where do they actually hold on and like, no, this is what we're going to do, right? Like this game is going to be hard and you're going to deal with it and we're not going to make it easier, or yeah we are, but we're going to cleverly keep the difficulty in this very specific way, right? Like Elden Ring did a clever example there with FromSoft's reputation of having hard games. Like you see how these developers do kind of interesting uh, solves to these difficult problems. And that's just something that I enjoy that I think is interesting. But yeah, to answer your question, it can be kind of hard to see like the vision of your thing change. Like the hardest part is really getting the team on board. Um, when you're doing a pivot of vision or when you're doing something that 6 months or a year ago you said you wouldn't do, but then like you're learning with the players of what the best version of your game is, and you got to roll with the punches. We definitely did that a lot on D4. I mean, you look at all the major updates we did, all the overhauls, like it was learning what the best version of this game will be, and you have to have that flexibility going into it. I gave a presentation on class design and on balance. I still have the version of this presentation that I give to every game team I ever go to, but my last pillar of design that I always have is titled being open to change.
Mm.
And the purpose of that pillar is we think we want to make game X, that's not what the game is we're going to make forever. It doesn't matter what lines in the sand you put. You got to be willing to roll with the punches to a degree and be smart about when and why. It doesn't mean like don't have any, don't be attached to anything. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like be careful of your sacred cows and just be aware that all that matters at the end of the day is that your players are having fun and that they like your game. Uh, Anything else besides that is kind of a mistake, in my
Mm.
opinion, over the long haul.
So in looking at your time on D4, I mean, we can do the duality of it. What do you feel like you are more like most proud of, and then what's something you think you would have liked to uh had a redo on? Like not necessarily a mistake per se or something like if pride versus shame, but like what you're most proud of, and then like what would you like to take another crack at?
Yeah. Um, Proud of there's a couple stories I could tell. Probably the one that I'll do though is season 2. So to paint a picture of what was going on, you remember season 1 launch, there were a lot of big problems with the game and people weren't very happy. We had just done, funny enough, remember that talk I gave you about like power creep and all that?
Right.
We were trying to get ahead of that in season 1. If you remember when we nerfed CDR and stats on items, we were trying to sneak in some control because we launched too powerful and we wanted to leave room for future seasons to not get too out of control. That was why we did it. And of course the community found out immediately and saw like, oh, they put in these buffs, but there's a bunch of fluff here, but they nerfed the big things that are important. And we tried, but I stand by it. But it needed to happen. But it was a tough time, right? And so the proudest moment I remember, it's gonna sound like an unproud moment, so it was middle of season 1. We're in the middle. We're getting towards the end of season 2 development, and most of the things that you saw in that presentation that happened in season 2, this was a season to remind you where we upended all the math of the game. And upending math in ARPG, by the way, is freaking terrifying. Math in ARPG is pretty important, it turns out. But we changed how vuln, crit, overpower, damage buckets, resistances, all that stuff works, right? Um, that middle of planning for that season, we hadn't done any of that yet. We knew it was a problem. And I remember I went into a meeting. This was with Joe P, if you know Joe Pipe or remember him.
We've been trying to
He was
get
my
him on for
boss.
a while, but
I love Joe P.
we're
He's a
gonna
great
we're
guy.
gonna keep trying.
But he's my boss. I go in, and I remember I went into this meeting because I knew it was a problem, and I knew that we were going to talk about this problem. And I went into the meeting. Basically, this was when I was in charge of all classes of like all the different pipelines and everything before I was in charge of life balance. This is the story of how that happened. But I went into that meeting, and going in, I had like in all caps on my piece of paper and my notes of what I'm mentally going in and what I had written down was, uh, I can maybe solve one of these problems in season 2, but the rest of it's going to have to wait because we're out of time and we're out of scope. Um, and so like I maybe can solve Vuln only, and that's it. We don't got time. Like I have so many other things I have to do, and I went into this being determined to tell him that. I came out of the meeting afterwards not only agreeing to do all of it to solve all of the damage buckets, vuln, crit, overpower, and resistances, and make new legendary unique items, and do vampiric powers and balance updates, but I'm also going to do this while starting a brand new team and splitting off my team, getting rid of the things I was currently working on, like Spiritborn, and dropping all of that, and doing this all with a brand new group of people, and they're going to extend the deadline of when our what we call our task complete date, which is like pencils down, we're going to use QA and verify it. We're going to go like a month and a half beyond that, which is going a week beyond, that's a big deal.
Mm.
We're going to go like a month and a half, 2 months beyond that, and go down to the wire for this freaking season because we want to solve these problems right now. And that's what I came out of the meeting with, and I was like, dear God, this is insane. But not only did we start the new team that I ended up running until I came to Riot, but we took a bunch of great people and we made it all happen in that month and a half. We rebalanced the entire game in that short amount of time. And most of my moments and the most fun times I have in the industry are those kind of like very big emergency, all hands on deck. You thought you could, produce 5 units of X, and instead you're being asked to do 20, and it's just so far beyond what you think you can do, and then everyone rises to the task and does it anyways. Um, that was one of the proudest moments, and really that team ever since then was a special team. That was a team that I got to put together. I handpicked, all the new hires that got to go on it, and they are excellent people. Um, like Colin and Charles Dunn and Liam, the people that you see now, and there's
Right.
others that you haven't seen. Frankie and others. They're just great people, and couldn't ask for a better team. So that was the proudest moment was the formation of that team, and then being able to grow those designers into really great people. They're all people I greatly miss. Least favorite moment. I don't know about least favorite moment, but there are definitely some designs I could call out that didn't pan out the way I wanted and dreamed and never made it there. And who knows, they might someday. But I am proud of what they were for how much work we had to do to get them across the finish line at all. But I'll give a couple. Necromancer. I had always had this vision when making the Book of the Dead that there would be a lot more ways to play that would be viable. The dream that I had was like you could be all minions, you could be no minions, and I think we made that happen, but we kind of flip-flopped every season of which one was better.
Right.
And then I really wanted there to be one where like you only had the golem or you only had skeletons or a certain type of skeleton. And then that would be a truly viable way to play and there'd be so many ways that players could express themselves. Like there could be a meaningful only skeleton build, and what you sacrifice in the golem only would be worth it. And that never really panned out. It was always so all or nothing, which is just how the human brain thinks, and it's hard to get away from that. And really, it was hard for us to design that specifically. Same on the druid, where I was kind of proud and also could have been better. Um,
Is it
give you a
because
little
there's
bit
no grizzly bear? Is it because we didn't get a grizzly bear?
close, close, not quite grizzly bear.
Told you it was gonna
Actually,
come
human.
back eventually. We were gonna come
You
back to
did.
it. I got a good memory
So on
about
the
that.
part, yeah, on the part I'm proud of with Druid, we had kind of a come to Jesus moment when we were making the Druid. Whereas a team, when I was first working on it, we were doing these things called class audits, where me or a couple select people would go and like really redesign the classes and come up with their themes and how their synergies would gonna work and their key passives and how those would translate to builds. And with the Druid, we had a very hard question, which was like, at the time of the game, we had this idea that you could be a human caster thingy, and we had the elemental like storm and earth, and we had this idea of the werewolf and the werebear, but there was no connective tissue for any of it. And what I mean by that was there wasn't a concept, or you couldn't at the time be like, I want to be a werewolf, and I only want to be a werewolf and not do anything else. The game didn't support that. Or I want to be a werebear and only be a werebear and not anything else. You couldn't do that. And all that the druid was this really jack of all trades of like you're switching between everything. And there wasn't this defined like, I want to do this and attach to this fantasy and have it play out. Like to give you an idea of how extreme it was, like Shred didn't exist in his ability. There wasn't a spender for werewolf.
Hmm.
No concept of it. And there wasn't a plan for it. And at the time, we were like, I put the line in the sand of like, hey, I think we're insane, and our players are gonna want this concept of I want to log in, I want to be a werewolf, and that's all I want to be, or I want to be a werebear. I don't give a crap about being a caster. I want to be a freaking bear. And I think a lot of people are gonna want that, and we delivered on that. But then we went above and beyond, and this is where I was proud of it, of like this idea that you had like werewolf, werebear, and then general shapeshifter, and then you had stormcast, earthcast, and general elementalist. And we were like, hey, can we deliver on all of that? And we were like, you know what? F it, we can, and we're going to, and we did. And it wasn't perfect, but like you had the key passive for every one of those, and you had ways to play with it all, and that was really cool. Um,
Was
what didn't pan out is, oh, go ahead.
I'm curious because like with the druid timeline, was druid the last class to come together like in its finality? Because I remember leading up to the game, it was like a week before it launched that the druids announced back at BlizzCon with the initial announcement, right? Um, and you slowly got drip fed information. You found out like
Mm-hmm.
the class ability of everybody else except for druid. And then like a week before, I was like, "Oh, they've got this there's a spirit hall and you get to choose different things and you'll see it in the game." But that was it. It was so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
was the druid the last one to like finally get the stamp of approval of like, "All right, we're finally locked in," or is that just my
Actually,
imagination?
funny enough, it wasn't. If any of them, it would have been the Necromancer, but honestly, they were all kind of close. The Book of the Dead was the last one of those to really come online, and that was pretty key. And the Necromancer went through a lot of iteration in the first place. But the Druids, the class mechanic probably came online the last. That was why you think of that, because it was the most involved by a lot. the quest to do it. We were the most ambitious with that one. I was the one that originally designed that, and it was there was a fantasy there that didn't really pan out that I'd wanted of like it would be a really interesting choice of when you get the boons and which one. It was like the separate leveling system, and there was like narrative tied behind it. And I really was a stick in the mud with other designers and really pushed this idea of like there was this snake one that was mysterious and you didn't know what it was, but you could go all in on that or get these other ones that are known and it would be a fun progression system. It turned out D4 players just don't got time for that. They just want to get the things. But
I will say, Adam, it
but
is
I
it's
liked it. It was
it's an
cool in my mind.
amazing
But
quest to do
to do once.
once.
To do once.
To
Yeah.
do once.
Learn that too. That was the thing that we learned was how important that is.
Well, I think like a
But
big thing is I play hardcore predominantly, so I was killing 3 or 4
mhm.
druids a season, and then having to come back and like, all right, here we go, Taldura.
Yeah, here we go.
Now
Yep.
I'm gonna wait for
So
those boons to come in.
but yeah, so it was just because it was so involved. It wasn't because they were the last. But going back to what I was a little sad about was I don't think we ever really made human form druid work as well as I wanted because of that freaking helmet. What was it? The one where you're a werewolf and you cast storm things.
Tempest
Tempest
Roar.
Roar. There you go. Tempest Roar. Freaking Tempest Roar. Sean designed that. I curse him, but I love him for it. He made something that was so cool that we couldn't measure up to it. Um, almost every season I had a plan of like we're gonna make another helmet and it's gonna go compete with Tempest Roar and it's gonna be the human form caster one and then we'll solve this problem forever. But it just there was always in the backlog of other things that we had to do. I don't know if they ever solved it or
they
did, but
they did bring up there was one. It was Ganthlian's birthright or visage, something like that. But another attempt at making human druid
yeah, like
a
I wish
thing.
we had gotten human right. I also wish we had gotten even just like the I feel like we delivered well on like the werebear and the werewolf, but we didn't really deliver on the middle one, like the shapeshift and the elementalist caster, as well as I
Right.
would have wanted either. They're really hard to make,
But
and I don't think we
it's
ever
got to do
really
so
got it.
many things. So yeah,
It's
that
got to do a lot of things, and it has to thread a very thin needle because if you go too far in either direction, you're just gonna be the one that's better.
right.
And so it was hard to get people to do both. But it's a minor gripe. You know, like most things panned out that I wanted to. A lot of minor things that didn't, but I'd say overall I was pretty happy.
Which is good. And I think the internet will be happy I got to yell at you about the class quest for druid a little bit,
I yelled
you
at
know.
myself. Don't you worry.
uh, I think that's fair. Um, we've talked a lot. You've been very gracious with your time. Like, what are your hopes for Diablo? I think like going forward. I mean, it's obviously going to play a big factor in your life. You put a lot of time on it. Um, what do you want out of Diablo?
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if it's most players. I really like when the story is really interesting and good, and I'm kind of motivated by that nowadays. I mean, playing every season is fun, but I want to see them take some really big chances and just do world building the way that Blizzard did in the past with WoW and Diablo and StarCraft. Like the storytelling is what I think is what I remember more. Like I like the gameplay, don't get me wrong. I played them thousands of hours, but I want my imagination and my heart to be grabbed again
Mm,
by the series. Like when I think of D2, don't know about you, but one of the coolest things about D2 was those cinematics were
yeah.
so cool. Seeing Tyrael and the corruption of like the hero from Diablo 1 and these crazy cool things and going to hell for the first time. Just these like amazing set pieces and characters that you really love and care about and seeing them progress. Um, I like that. On like the game itself side, like I I think it'd be interesting to see them take some big chances. Like put some really firm stakes in the ground at the risk of alienating people and doing something that's really interesting and different and risky. Really hard to do though with a franchise as big as that. So I understand why it's hard. But I tend to like games that are a little more sharp, especially as I get older. Like, I really like FromSoft games. I really like games where like the developer has a very clear vision and there are obvious downsides, and they put a line in the sand and say, "We don't care. We're taking the downsides because we want this really sharp thing or experience for a player to have." And those are the types of things I think I enjoy a lot nowadays. So,
Yeah, I think we've
yeah.
talked about it on the show as well. Like after, this is season 10, we've had a full expansion. There is another one in the
Yeah.
works. Like start getting weird with it. Start deviating
Yeah.
and
Getting weird. Yeah,
like
that's a good way to put it.
take a risk now when the stakes are significantly lower, and then maybe you do hit on things that will affect the franchise going forward, that maybe like
Yeah.
seasons are very recyclable. If you take a risk on one and it doesn't work, you have another season to try again. Why not? Like that's why at least I like this newest season. These chaos armors, um, they're not normal. They're out of the loop, and it's something new to play with and to affect the design. And if they go away and they never make their way back, that's fine. Try something else. Try
Yeah, I'll say
another
I
thing.
was glad when I saw their design because I was like, I thought of that. I thought that was too crazy. So I'm glad that they did something that I thought was too crazy because that's,
Right.
I like
And
crazy to be fair. Me as a personal designer, I like pushing boundaries and being crazy.
what
But
what are we waiting for, right? It's after 10
yeah.
seasons. Play it safe in season 1 and 2, but then, as the game's moving on, just get fucking weird with it. Who cares? Um, like it doesn't matter
Yeah,
anymore. Um, all right, awesome. Well, Adam, thank you again for your time. Thanks for coming on. Obviously, good luck out there at Riot. I can't wait to hear what you are working on when you eventually can tell people. Um,
I can't wait to do it someday. I really, really hope I get to. Then you'll be seeing me everywhere again. It'll be
well,
great. I
uh,
miss
I
it.
I look forward to it. But obviously, keep doing good work. And in the meantime, we'll close it out as we always do with a moo, moo, moo.
Moo, 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 moo.
Look at that, natural.